This morning. The War Museum is, of course, where she's broadcasting from there in the area. Let's cross over to her to find out a little bit about what's going to be happening there. Ayanda.
Well, Leanne, a very good morning to you once again. Yes, the Department of Arts, Culture and Heritage will be launching December as Reconciliation Month in the build-up to the 16th. And Leanne, coming to you live from inside the War Museum, surrounded by the artwork and the artifacts, I'm reminded about just how deep and layered our history is, how rich and yet often macabre it really was, and how very important aspects of our past left undocumented. Because as you'll know, that in our history of apartheid, the history belonged to the victors. But this time around, we're seeing some color in the artifacts here at the War Museum. And that is because what used to be known as a white man's war has now been put into context as the role of black South Africans, women and children is also coming to the fore. I'm joined now by the director here at the War Museum, Tokkie Pretorius. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you. Morning.
Speak to us about the many ways in which you're unearthing the truth and the whole context behind the Anglo-Boer War, which you know now and corrected me earlier and said it was the South African War. How are you going about making sure that we know it as the South African War?
You've said before that it's a white man's war, but it's actually a white man's war that never was. That there was a third force in this war, and that's our black South African. Unfortunately, this museum was known as an exclusive Afrikaner museum. We're following now an inclusive approach, showing the history as it was. And that means that this museum is now a South African museum. It stands for nation building, social cohesion, the reconciliation, because they were joint suffering of white and black.
And is that why we were in this new section that will be unveiled by the Minister a little bit later this morning, the Sol Plaatjie section? Speak to us about that.
The Sol Plaatjie section, it was named after Sol Plaatjie because he was in the war, he was a figure then, he was later a founder member of the ANC. So we felt that we must show the whole history. We focus on young people, especially children. The aim is not to minimize the experience of the Afrikaner, but to add on. So in other words, the blacks were involved as scouts, spies, and all sorts of functions by both the Boers and the British. So what we put up here in this hall is the total experience of black people in this war.
As interpreters as well. Sol Plaatjie was an interpreter for the English, and you gave us some context a little bit earlier of just how significant a role he played and how he thought it would make the plight of black people better after the war, but as you indicated, it became much worse. Let's speak a little bit now about the suffering of all black, whites and different races, women, children and the elderly during the war, and there's a special garden of remembrance for them as well.
Yeah, we've done the garden of the remembrance of all the names black and white alphabetically, showing the suffering. There were about 27 white women and children who died in these camps. There were about 24,000 black women and children who also died in these camps. But it was a mutual suffering. It just shows the aim is, when you visit this museum, it's a life-changing experience. The aim is to show the suffering of war, not to glorify war. So when you walk out here, you'll find you're a changed person. See, it's women and children who suffer the most during a war. There's about 2 times or even more women and children who died during the war than men actually on the battlefield.
And how do ordinary South Africans get a sneak peek as to what happened and come and tour this museum? Because we have a special privilege as Morning Live. We're broadcasting here, but I think it's something that all South Africans should experience. Speak to me about ticket prices and when the museum opens and the like.
The museum is open weekdays from 8 in the morning till 4:30 every day. It's open on public holidays as well. It's open weekends, Saturdays in the morning till 5 in the afternoon, as well as on Sundays. It's very cheap. The aim is not to get money. The aim is to focus on young children. So we get big school groups, both black and white. Yeah, we visit the museum. It's R5 interest fee for a child, R10 interest fee for you and me.
And there's an added bonus now as well, because there's a new section in the museum, and that is the Sol Plaatjie section that chronicles a very, very important part of our history, and that is the role of black South Africans, women, children, and the men who played different roles in this particular war. And I love what you said, that it is not about glorifying war, but it is about showcasing the suffering. It brings to mind a particular saying that when elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. So it's the little ones, the vulnerable ones that suffer when war is launched. But let's leave it there, at least for now. More in just a moment. A quick ad break. Morning Live continues after this. Stay with us.